I'm from Sri Lanka, and I think in 1999 I gave a similar speech, maybe in the World Congress of Pediatric Infectious Diseases, on a similar topic, that is millennium bugs and serial killers, where I discussed more the history of infectious diseases. But today I am going to talk about the future of infectious diseases. First of all, let me explain what an emerging infection is. Emerging infectious disease is an infectious disease that has newly appeared in a population or that has been known for some time but is rapidly increasing in incidences or in geographic range. So it is not only the infection is newly appearing, but re-emerging infection disease is also considered as emerging. Now this is Peter Medava. He's a Brazilian, but he's originally a British fellow. He's a zoologist, but he had a lot of work on viruses, and he got the Nobel Prize in 1960 for physiology and medicine. And he said actually the virus is a piece of bad news wrapped in a protein coat. Okay, I think, can you hear me? I think that's okay. You see, this is important. William Stewart, US surgeon, remarked in 1967, bad news for all the pediatric infectious disease people. That is what he said. He said it is time to close the book on infectious diseases and pay more attention to chronic ailments such as cancer and heart disease, because that was the time that the people have invented vaccines and antibiotics, and all kinds of antibiotics came into existence, and people thought that it is going to be the panacea for infectious diseases. So everybody thought we can close the chapters. And even the Nobel laureate Australian virologist Macfarlane Burnett said that actually the future for infectious disease is going to be very dull. But almost 30-40 years later, history has proved them both wrong. Since those bold claims were made, more than 20 novel diseases, including the worst pandemic of humans ever have faced, AIDS, emerged onto the world stage. Even today, globally, infectious diseases account for about 25% of 57 million annual deaths worldwide. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't worry, you will have your practice. But what is important for us is to find out what are the origins of these new threats and what provokes their appearance in the first place. Why do we get worried about these new infections coming up? How do they come? In a very sentimental way, if you have an axiomatic starting point for discussion for this topic, is the simple recognition that microbes, plants, animals, and humans are cohabitants of the planet. At least were. And they had an ecological balance, and they were actually living together very peacefully. Right. So this stable cohabitation is very important, because if you take the present day, almost all the viruses causing human infections were originally living in harmony with their natural host in the jungles. And this is very important. Smallpox, for example, apparently was a rodent virus between 68,000 to 600 years ago. And measles was from wild buffaloes and antelopes, and we know that measles is more like distemper or rinderpest virus. And about 11,000 years ago, it has shifted to humans. Influenza, again, from aquatic birds around 10,000 years ago. Now we have a human influenza as well. What is more important is, if you are talking about the so-called cohabitation, peaceful cohabitation, no virus is evolutionarily successful in their continuance of existence if they harm the host. That is the point. If they harm the host, that is going to be the end of them. Now, for example, smallpox. Smallpox, the only natural host was human beings. Now, we eradicated the smallpox also. So, if you have a virus and if it destroys the host, that is going to be the end of them as well. So, there is no virus harming the host. So, we become incidental hosts. That is the most important point you have to realize. So why we became incidental hosts? Because we have a lot of ecological and biological disturbances, mainly caused by humans and also by nature. And then eventually you have changes in the host, that is we have done the changes, so we have in our body you get changes in the pathogens, that's very important, which I will discuss, and the changes in the environment. So this causes the instability of this cohabitation. If you take the ecological disturbances, that is global climatic changes, altering the physical and biological environment, interaction with other tenants like microbes, animals and plants by encroaching their territories, and the hygienic and therapeutic interventions. And then you have the evolutionary and adaptability, mainly the microbes actually, they have genetic diversity and adaptability, survival skills that they have to counter for adverse situations, and various other things which I will discuss one by one if I have time. Now this is what the human beings have done to this world. With the so-called advances in medicine and science, from 2000 onwards you can see there is a dramatic increase in the global temperature. This is a very important point, because when the global temperature goes up, the European and the weather in those parts of the world also becoming more identical to the tropics. And this is why the Asian tiger mosquito, the Aedes aegypti, is now you can see is actually going towards the rest of the world. Now you can see the new epidemics are coming up. Of dengue. I'm sure that you know, in 1979, there were only 8 countries with dengue. And now we have more than 108 countries with dengue. So dengue is going round. And if you see this slide, this is about the malaria. I should not talk about malaria because I'm restricted to viruses. But just to give an explanation, you can see they believe that malaria might go to the European countries and to US by 2050. And so as dengue, because Anopheles and mosquito, the Aedes aegypti, more or less at the same sort of habitation. This is another thing I got from this called global warming website. This is just to show that even the European countries are at risk of malaria. So altering physical and microbial environment, which we have been doing this for last many thousands of years, I think, maybe 100,000. When we were, I'm sorry about the slides actually, when we started, when we were almost the people of this nature hunting, and then we turned into the farmers could not live alone. So they had to actually, when they became farmers, they started deforestation of the land to create fields, and also there will be colonization, and they started domesticating animals. And when we shifted to the modern man, he became the ruler of the world, and he became the ruler of the world. And as you can see that there is extensive deforestation, urbanization leading to pollution on one hand, and building megacities. So what we did actually, we have not given space for other people to live. We have taken their lands as well. And then you have the interaction. Because of this, there were no land for the other animals to live, and then we see what has happened to us. So we started encroaching their lands. And as a result of that, all we came into contact, direct contact Not only we, our domesticated animals also came into contact with the wild animals trade directly. And also at the same time, we had international wild animal trading. And I'm sorry, I don't know why this... Then we have, if you take about the hygienic and therapeutic interventions also played a very important role. Why? Because, as you can see, one of the reasons for population explosion was that. Because our population in 2006, 1900, was only 1.6 billion. Today, after 100 years, it's 6 billion, almost fourfold rise. And now, because of the population control, now we expect that every 70 years we are going to double our population. So where are you going to live? We are going to take up their territories. So this is because of thanks to hygienic and therapeutic interventions. And the average life expectancy also has gone up from 35 years, the medieval era, to 75 today. And the modern drugs and blood products also contributed to hemophilia, blood products using hemophilia, and you all know HIV infections, particularly in the UK. And also needle sharing among drug users, which can transmit new diseases. And also organ transplant and devices, because of that, now we have new pathogens emerging. Well, this is just to highlight few. Now, what is the genetic diversity and adaptability of the viruses, evolution response? Viruses are smarter than us, so as the bacteria. Microbes are smarter. Charles Darwin claims that we are the what you call in the evolutionary ladder, the peak, but it is not right. Because the human evolution is slow, because even our gene mutation, there is a checking up mechanism. There's a proofreading. So that our mutations are very slow, whereas there are dynamic changes in the viruses and bacteria. They mutate rapidly every second, and whatever the good mutations have been taken in. And also we have inherited a robust immune system. That is where our success is. We have a robust immune system providing lifelong immunity to infections. But unfortunately, we will not be able to transfer it to our generations. They also have to build up from the scratch immunity. If we had that ability, whatever we generate, if you had been able to transfer, I think there has been no need to give even vaccines. But unfortunately, we didn't have it. Whereas in microbes, when they quickly proliferate and they are successful genes, they not only transfer to their offspring, but they transfer to their neighbors as well, using phages. So therefore, in the long run, for survival, we are far too low in comparison to bacteria. And survival, again, this is what Darwin has noted. Darwin noted that the struggle for life most severe between individuals and varieties of the same species. We struggle each other for survival. Whereas the microbes and the viruses, they don't do that. They are trying to survive their generations, their species. Now, this is the difference between microbes and animals and human beings. Microbes try to share their survival kits to others using various methods. But we compete each other to keep our survival. And the microbes are species survival. They are thinking of species survival, whereas we think of individual survival. And they overcome their adverse periods by becoming dormant. We overcome our adverse periods by fighting each other, which is happening today. Now, when I said that what happened to us was that we are now going closer to the wild animals, and that may be the main reason why we are having emergent disease. Actually, that is the main reason, especially in my topic, because 70% of all emerging diseases are zoonotic. And out of that zoonotic diseases, viral infections are basically zoonotic. So therefore, I am concentrating today only on the zoonotic viral infections. We have two ways of transmitting them. One is actually from the direct transfer directly from the wild animals to us, and the other one actually through vectors. These are the two ways that we can transport them. And this is also, sometimes you get zoonosis to your doorstep by people bringing that. I am sure you all know this young lady, and I hope that she has not brought any reptilian viruses into your country. She's from Sri Lanka. When she came to Sri Lanka, I think last year, I mean, this young lady carrying this python was almost 25 kilos in weight. Right. So why zoonoses are so important for us? It is because that if you take if the viral disease is specific to human beings, that is bad news, because we are capable of producing vaccines against them. And if we are the only host, like in smallpox, measles, and polio, one day we will be able to eradicate them. Whereas the zoonosis, or most of the emerging diseases, as long as the natural host is there in the jungles, we will never be able to eradicate them. So we will go on having epidemics. And the second important thing about zoonosis is that once you get it, and we sometimes don't know the actual natural host, we blame our domesticated animals around us, like pigs and horses and all that. But they may not be the actual host. Now, for example, Japanese bee encephalitis, we are blaming very often the pigs, and the pigs are actually causes the illness to us. But pigs may not be the natural host. And now people believe probably aquatic birds, maybe bats, who knows? So sometimes that problem is there. We don't know what the natural host is, which I will discuss later. So major determinants of emerging diseases, of course, human activities, population explosion, human movement and international travel, urbanization, deforestation and land use, wild animal trading, poverty and social inequality, war and civil unrest. A classic example is polio is now there in Syria. Advanced medical interventions, transplant and syringe use, they are all contributed to this. Then the environmental factors, climate and weather changes, changing ecosystem, global warming, and the man-made environmental changes, pollution and ozone depletion. And then the changes of the viral behavior, genetic recombination, reassortment and changes in the virulence, and you can jump from one species to the another, and the vector also, shifting of vector is also we have seen, and adapting to new ecological niches, virus can do that. So we have all kinds of provocative factors to do that. So I will now give one by one examples. Before that, I will give a very good example now. Because of this, the global travel, air travel and international animal trade, it is very easy for us to make any epidemic global. That is going to be very, very, very going to be the future. So in the future, all these, whatever the diseases that spread in a particular location can be, within a matter of a day or two, can be a global disaster. Right. Human mobility and global travel, just to give you an example, it is said that at any given time, there are more than 500,000 people airborne around the planet. And also, this level of population flux means that the geographical barriers faced by infectious diseases in the past have largely been removed. For example, smallpox to travel from China to Europe took about 160 years. But today, within a matter of 6 months, SARS has spread all over the world. So journeys can be made so quickly that the individuals can arrive at a destination well within the incubation period of infectious diseases. thereby making outbreaks much more difficult to contain. And now I'll give you one example after the example. This is about Nipah virus to show impact of human environmental modifications and encroachment. Right. Nipah was started in September 1998. It's a mystery illness appeared in northern Malaysia. And in June, there were 211 cases from Malaysia and 11 cases from Singapore with same symptoms were reported. And then they had features of more like that of encephalitis, and also swine. Pigs in the vicinity also were sick. They were having some symptoms. So they thought that this is Japanese bee encephalitis. They thought this is Japanese bee encephalitis, started slaughtering pigs and all that. But the symptoms in the pigs were respiratory, and they were mild, and they were living, they were harboring the virus for a longer period. Whereas in the human beings, it was CNS symptoms. So therefore, number one, it cannot be Japanese bee encephalitis. Number two, because the pigs are also affected, they are actually, they are also just like us. They are not the natural host. Pigs are obviously not the natural host because they are also getting infected. But started killing pigs, didn't solve the problem. And now what they found was, they found that in fruit bats. It's a natural host, it's a fruit bat. And so Hendra-related paramyxovirus is called Nipah. And the reason now they found was that the construction of large number of piggeries in virgin Malaysian rainforest in the northern part. Then orchards planted nearby attracted fruit bats, and the contamination of the pig pens with bat excreta and probably from the partially eaten piece of fruit. The bats are notorious to have these partially eaten fruits, and they may contain bat saliva together with the viruses. And the mild illness in pigs, therefore, they have longer duration of infectivity for human beings. And viruses are smarter than us. This is one classic example, is this Venezuelan equine encephalitis. The natural host is a small rodent. And the virus is transmitted by what we call Q-lex tinniopus mosquitoes. They exclusively bite very small animals. So when there is very highly viremic strains of the virus in the rodents, then occasionally it goes to other mosquitoes who bites bigger animals like human beings. And then you get suddenly epidemic cropping up. So the outbreaks were there naturally from time to time. But in 93 and 96, there were two Mexican outbreaks where there was a severe outbreak, and they found that the rodents at that time, they were not having this viremia. They were not highly viremic, but still they were transmitting the disease. To see what happened was that there was a mutation in the gene of there was a mutation in the virus, so that it makes the different glycoprotein, and it makes the other mosquitoes, mainly the anthrophilic mosquitoes, also able to change to carry the viruses. So because of that, then what happens, it became epidemic in Mexico in 1993 and 1996, jumping from one kind of mosquito to another kind of mosquito. Then the population growth, it is said that the dengue, although we don't know a lot about it the origin, it's supposed to be a sylvatic disease among non-human primates. And then accidentally people get infected when they go to jungle to fetch things. And that dies down there. And then suddenly there is because of the urbanization and we are encroached in the jungles, then it became an urban cycle where the Aedes aegypti became the vector, which is actually an anthropophilic mosquito. And then it became urban, and now it becomes epidemic and endemic in many parts of the world. And it is going to be a devastating disease. And right now in Sri Lanka, that is the biggest problem we have. Now, climatic change and emerging disease is also important. Now, this is about the Ebola virus. As you know, that Ebola virus actually, the name Ebola is the Ebola river in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the first case of Ebola occurred in 1976. And at the same time, 76, there was another epidemic in Sudan, but they were due to two different distinct species. But since then, there have been 25 outbreaks in Central Africa. 25 outbreaks, and almost annually. And in some years, in 2012 particularly, there is more than two epidemics. But subsequently they found that the Ebola epidemic appeared to peak at times of severe drought. And before the human outbreak, there is a wild animal outbreaks noted by dead carcass surveillance. So therefore, point number one is those wild primates are not the host. They are also incidental hosts. They are also just like us. So the best interpretation of this finding is that the diverse groups of animals forced to come together as they forage for dwindling water, because it all happens in drought. And then you get they transmit it becomes the resource and facilitate transmission. And then it becomes infected to us. And now again they believe that it is the wild bats who are the natural host of Ebola. Then the climatic change. In 1993, first epidemic of hantavirus pulmonary syndrome occurred in the US. 1992, you know, the severe El Nino effect causes severe heavy rainfall in US with proliferation of vegetation, which really explode the rodent population. And then you have a lot of rodent, particularly the deer mouse. He is the natural hantavirus host. Then it infects the human beings, and you had the cycle. Again in 1999, there was a second El Nino effect. The same thing happened, and then again they got the infection, El Nino, due to El Nino effect. So therefore, climatic changes also plays an important role. This is about the SARS. This is what I told you. The SARS is very interesting because doctors who treated SARS patients in Shandong province, China, traveled to Hong Kong and stayed in the 9th floor of a hotel. In that particular 9th floor, there was a person, a businessman from Vietnam. He went to Vietnam from that while carrying the germ. And then another guest from Canada went to Toronto. And then another flight attendant who was there went to Singapore. And then it spread all over. And then what happened? In 6 months' time, SARS was found almost everywhere in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, that is why the global travel is so important for us in the future. I have no time, so I will just go through. So this is another example of West Nile virus, which has never been in the US. It got into the US. How it has happened actually? Because there was a shipment of birds to Bronx Zoo in New York from Egypt. And then that was early summer. There was a warm weather, ideal for mosquito breeding. Mosquitoes started to breed, so that some of these birds were actually infected. So through mosquitoes, it went to the native birds in US, and native birds they started to have a primary enzootic cycle. Then what happens? The mosquitoes started biting horses and human beings, became incidental host, and then it started. Then what happened? The infected birds began to migrate all over US, and the West Nile virus started everywhere in the US. So this I think I am not really complete if I don't say a few words about HIV and SIV, because it is very important. Cross-species transmission events is still ongoing. 33 species of non-human primates harbor their own SIV species. Remember, 33 species have their own SIV species. Hunting and butchering of non-human primates for food common in Central Africa. SIV isolated from bush meat prepared from human consumption. And ancestral strains of HIV-1 persist in wild chimpanzees. And president of laboratory worker acquired SIV infection. and 12 of 16 SIV is capable of infecting human. These are all historical notes that what is important. Why I will say why it is important, because HIV-1 apparently has got from simian immune deficiency virus CP such chimpanzees, and the SIV-SM, that is HIV-2, is from SIV-SM, that is called the Sudi Megabi, from Sierra Leone and Liberia. So now we believe that HIV-1 and HIV-2 has jumped from animals to us. But the question is, SIV-CPS, that is the chimpanzees, and the SIV in the Mangabe had been existed for millions of years. That is the point. Same virus causes lethal immune deficiency in primates, that's a different one. Immune contact with SIV is likely long-standing, more than 1,000 years. I'm sure that we were living in the jungles, for such a long time, and people went for hunting. But it's human HIV appears only 60 years ago, recently. And also, more than 10 million African slaves from Central America was taken to US, and they did not carry HIV. So therefore, the question is, why suddenly after so many years, this SIV shifted, jump into human beings? And how has it happened? Until and unless we know how, as I told you, there are 16 SIV infections which are pathological to us, can cause human infections. And thank God that the HIV is only sexually transmitted, so therefore there is some control. What if we have a lentivirus or a SIV virus which can be transmitted with a respiratory tract with our sputum? So therefore, it is very important for us to know how this has happened after millions of years. Now, this is just to show the dynamic gene mutations helping the viruses. This is influenza epidemics. As I told you, influenza is orthomyxovirus, which is primarily aquatic birds, and which has jumped to us. But originally in 1958 and even 2000 avian flu, there's directly from wild animal birds to us. But then we have pandemics where the swine is pig also involved, the so-called swine flu. And now what happens, we have what you call resortments. When you have swine the influenza and the aquatic bird influenza, there is resorting. I'm sure that you all virologists here will know better than me, because unlike other RNA viruses, this has, I think, 8 particles, so that you can resort them within the host, so that you have the resortment of the latest one is actually which has happened in 2009 in Mexico and in US, where you have H3N2 swine influenza, which has a triple assortment, where there was a human flu virus, there was an avian flu virus, and there's a swine flu virus. And you can have all kinds of resortment, so therefore providing vaccine is going to be very difficult. Now I am going to my most important part in the future. Future is going to be, ladies and gentlemen, bats. Because some emerging pathogens, the bat origin has been confirmed so far, the new ones, Hendra virus, Lissa virus, Australian Lissa virus, Nipah virus in Malaysia and Bangladesh, then Marburg disease and Ebola, and I think recently, and there was another Ebola virus, filovirus, viridae virus in Philippines as well, isn't it, in green monkeys. What you call that? Vietnam virus or something, which has not been infected, but you never know, because it might come one day. Anyway, so presumed bat associated EIDs, which of recent rabies, of course, we know. European bat Lissa virus type 1 and 2, West Caucasian bat virus, Aravan virus, Kujan virus, Irkut virus, Lagos bat virus, Shimoni virus, all these viruses, very few epidemics report, not epidemics that were sporadic cases, but they were, the virus is found in natural host is actually the bats. The important thing is 66 virus types have been isolated from bats of 74 species. They are carrying all kinds of viruses. Why it is important for us to know this? Because Chiroptera are the oldest mammalian order, and they were surviving. They don't have medicines, they don't have vaccines, but still they survive. Bats are the second largest order of mammals. Ecological flexibility, bats inhabit a wide variety of ecological niches. You can find everywhere, in your houses, in caves, in jungles, wherever they are there. And many bat species roost together in a very large and dense colonies. It is said sometimes the bats, they are they are roosting sometimes millions in one. So therefore, they are sharing the viruses. Their cohabitant viruses they are sharing. As I told you, they are natural hosts, so nothing will happen to the virus or to the bacteria or to the bat. But they are surviving with the virus inside them. Then roosting plasticity and the broad food range means that the bats could transport viral material to many different animal species in various locations per unit time. That's what is important. They can fly anywhere. So they can carry the viruses with them. Bats are capable of harboring large number of genetically diverse viruses within a geographic location and within taxonomic groups. Now there was a study done in Africa, and they found that there are more than 66 types of viruses, multiple viruses. Most of them are pathogenic to us, but fortunately we have never reported. And the one example what they do now, people are really experimenting and doing research to find out why bats don't die. They are carrying the rabies virus, but they don't die, they don't get rabies. I think it is very interesting for us to know why, because that may give us a clue to protect ourselves. So they found one thing that's called interferon alpha family, the genes. They found there are 24 genes of interferon alpha family, whereas humans we have only one. Then the interferon alpha, I'm sure that you all know, is supposed to be one of the most important gene we need to have to combat viral illnesses. So there may be those 24 genes are protecting the bat, but providing accommodation for the viruses. We don't know. Needs words. Just a few words about, I don't have time to go through, but this is just a few words about what are these emerging diseases produced in human beings? What are the symptoms? Well, number one, you have respiratory symptoms like the SARS, MERS in Middle East countries, which occurred about 2 years ago, avian influenza, again respiratory symptoms. Then you have encephalitis picture like in JE vaccine, West Nile fever, all the forms of encephalitic, the equine encephalitis, Nipah virus, and etc. Then hemorrhagic fevers, dengue, Ebola, Marburg. Acute hemorrhagic fevers, I think that probably we are running short of time, that these are the viruses which causes hemorrhagic fevers. I am sure that you all know, I need not to go through them. Then these are the viruses which cause acute respiratory symptoms, and these are the worldwide distribution of major arboviral encephalitis. Most of them are equine virus, but you have JE virus. I am sure that you have JE virus in your country as well. We had JE virus, but now it is under control after vaccination. And when to suspect? Occurrence of a cluster of cases of flu-like symptoms in a limited geographical area at a certain time frame. Suddenly you get flu is coming up in a particular region. And in addition to flu, at least some of the patients should show either severe respiratory symptoms, hemorrhagic symptoms, or features of encephalitis. This is very important. Now, for example, Japanese bee encephalitis, I think it's about there is iceberg phenomena. If you have one person with symptoms of encephalitis, there will be probably 99 or 100 people with subclinical attacks. So therefore, all may not come with the real CNS symptoms, only few of them. But the flu-like symptoms are there in the area. So flu-like symptoms, few of them with respiratory symptoms or hemorrhagic symptoms or features of encephalitis. Then at the same time, if you have symptoms among the domesticated animals in your vicinity, then of course you really have to think of it. Now this is the global emerging disease control plan by WHO. strengthen the international surveillance networks to detect, control, and reducing emerging diseases, improve the international public health infrastructure, laboratories, because diagnosis is very difficult, research, technology, and communication, and develop better international standard of guidelines and recommendations, improve international capabilities to respond to disease outbreaks with adequate medical and scientific resources. Focus attention and resource on training and supporting medical and scientific expertise. Encourage national governments to improve their public health care systems. I think that is what is most important. Have we done enough? We have done all kinds of things, but we have done enough. The latest threat emerged on 19th October when the WHO reported a cluster of cases of acute flaccid paralysis in a conflict-ridden province of eastern Syria. And initially 2, but later it became 10 in 29th of October. Now it is more, and they found that they are having polio. A situation in Israel is very interesting, the neighboring country. And they found in in Israel, there are no human cases. But when they examined the sewerage water, in many places, they found they are full of type 1 wild polio virus. They don't have the disease because immunity rate is almost 99% vaccination rate. So they don't have the disease, but they are giving IPV. They don't give oral polio. So therefore, they are just transmitting, circulating silently for many months. What is the risk of this? If they go to places where there is a problem. A classic example is threat to Europe. What they say is certain countries, they don't have a surveillance system in Europe, particularly Romania, Bosnia, and then Georgia and Ukraine. And people from Syria is also migrating to those countries because some of these countries are Muslim countries. And also the Israel is also maybe migrating to these European countries. These countries have a high risk rate, because their immunity rate is not as good as in Israel, and also they don't have the surveillance system. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are heading for trouble if you don't do something. Now, the take-home message is a population explosion, modernization, or urbanization all leads to encroachment of sylvatic territories, exposing us to new diseases. Global climatic man-made environmental changes force vectors to change host and infected birds to migrate to other areas. Global travel and international wild animal trade facilitate global transmission. Genetic diversity, ability to jump from species to species, together with natural host symbiosis, allow the long-term survival of viruses, pathogenic viruses to us. Emerging diseases is a continuous process, and there is no way we could prevent it, because we don't know the natural host of many of those emerging diseases. The only option is to anticipate, detect, act, control, and call for help. You need global support. Without the global support, I don't think that we can do anything, because it's an emerging disease nowadays is not just emerging in a region, it is emerging global infectious disease. Thank you very much.